at this point, we're facing some great challenges as it relates to terms and conditions of work, the employment contract. And most of our members, one of the challenges we face is that our membership under the Public Workers Union, you coming as a worker in the service as an established officer under the Public Service Commission. But what we have seen over the years is that government is adopting other forms of employment, especially the contract for service and contract of service situation, which is having a great impact, a negative impact on the public service and workers in Grenada in general within the public service. Because what we see happening here is that we have persons who are in the service, but they're not established officers. And this has been happening for some 25 years now, whereby you find we have workers who are employed in the government service as contract officers, and they have been there for some 25 years, some 10 years. We have persons 15 years, and I think the longest we may have had is 25 years, whereby they sit in the government service, but they are not established appointed officers. They hold a contract, and government says to you, you are not under my system really. You work in the public service, but you don't get some of the benefits that you ought to receive as a public officer. Yes, pension has been removed from public officers, and that is one of the critical issues that we face also. And these workers, government does this so as not to give those officers these benefits, because we have a case whereby we've taken the government court for our benefits as it relates to contract work. These workers suffer a great deal because they are not able to go to the bank to get a loan, to get any form of assistance as it relates to the upward mobility, being able to improve their standard of living. Because when you are on these contracts, you are there for a specified period of time, more or less. Government says your contract is for a specified period of time, but you're there on a lasting basis for an unspecified period. So you would be sitting in that position for 20, 25 years, and government continuously saying to you, you are a contracted worker. But in truth and in fact, you are a permanent worker. And you are not given the opportunity to become an established officer so that you can get the necessary benefits that goes along with this, especially the ability to grow economically and socially, to be able to improve your standard of living. One of the things that we know and we understand is that our labor code clearly states, section 29(5) clearly tells us that the workers are permanent employees. Because under section 29(5), it tells us exactly how a worker, what are the arrangements in terms of a fixed term contract and in terms of a contract that is for an unspecified period. And it says to us, where the purpose or effect of a contract that is purportedly for a specified period of time or for a specific task is the filling on a lasting basis of a post connected with the normal or permanent activity of the undertaking, establishment, or service, it shall be deemed to be a contract for an unspecified period of time. So we have stated to government of Grenada, you are violating the law. You are breaking the law. You're not respecting the law. You're not honoring the law. We have definitely stated that to our government. And we have tried, one of the things that we have tried over the years, which is not working for us, is that we have decided, let's sit on the table with government of Grenada and see how we could get them to appoint persons on a periodic basis. But what we have happening is that we only get them to employ persons when somebody leaves, when somebody resigns, when somebody retires, when somebody dies. and that post become vacant. And what we've seen now happening that is even more problematic and has become a more serious challenge to us to get the members employed on a permanent basis is that the government of Grenada has instituted under our structural adjustment program a 3 for 10 policy, which means that every 3 workers that leaves the 10 workers that leaves the public service, they would only employ 3. So that is a barrier that has been placed on employing persons permanently into the public service. So we have set the government on the table when we were trying to be able to speed up this, that we think you should actually create the necessary positions so that people could fill it. Because if we wait for persons to die, for persons to leave the service, for persons to retire, we are not getting anywhere. To leave based on medical purposes, we are not getting anybody appointed because you still have that 3 for 10 policy that is hindering the ability of any worker to get appointed. So we say we cannot accept that. We need to see some change. They said to us, listen, we would appoint persons when there is the vacancy comes. Well, the vacancy don't ever come. At the last negotiations we had with the government of Grenada, they said to us flat out that this is a policy of the government of Grenada to employ persons in this way. It is a policy and we don't intend to change it. So we said to them, okay, let us bargain. We have to get salary increases of 4%. You have asked us to defer. As a matter of fact, you asked us to forego those salary increases. Our membership said to us, we are not appointed. We are on contract. So we are not willing to forego our salary increases to the government of Grenada when many of the workers are not appointed. And you're still saying to us, they're not entitled to the 4%. When we know they're entitled because you cannot discriminate. However, we said to them, we're willing to negotiate. And what we will do, we will defer our salary increases. And we will defer it for a matter of 6 months and give you the opportunity to appoint workers. So we defer it for you to have that ability to do that, appoint persons, give us the appointment of our membership, and we would defer the salary increases for a matter of 6 months. And the thing is, government of Grenada has resisted, and they have again impressed upon us, this is our policy and we cannot do this. We are not willing to do this. We are not willing to appoint anyone where we have to go to conciliation first and foremost. So you write to the Ministry of Labor, you complain that we have an issue, we have a grievance, well, not a grievance, we have a dispute. And we say to them, this is a dispute. The dispute is over the fact that government has violated the labor code, etc., etc. And we write to them. But the government of Grenada, when we go to the Ministry of Labor, we go to the Labor Commissioner who works with the government of Grenada. And so we are actually going back to the government of Grenada.
So you have no illusions about the Minister of about the Labour Commissioner then? You've no illusions about his or her...
There is really very little confidence that when we go there, we would get justice, that we would get results.
Okay. Now, I don't understand how you can conciliate on what is a legal right, because conciliation implies some compromise, and I don't know that you can compromise on a right that you have by law. So if this conciliation step doesn't work, where do you go after that? What's the next step after that?
It has to be mediation, and it's same in the Ministry of Labor, because then we go to the Labor Minister. Because when you have a dispute, it is the Labor Minister to resolve it. Right? So we would go to the Minister of Labor and let him know, okay, this is the dispute based on this grievance that our members had, that the union has gotten involved in because we are not happy about it. We want to see the best interest of our members. However, when you go there, as I said, we're going back to government again.
So Rachel, have you actually gone through this process?
No, we have not yet gone through this process.
Okay.
Because we still have the feeling that we need to resolve the matter around the table. As a matter of fact, we have decided that based on what is happening again, to still go back to the ministry, the Department of Public Administration, who is not, as we normally say in the trade union movement, that we going back to another body that is not a legal body. It is not stated in our constitution, but it is the body that government says must be responsible for approval of any appointment in the public service. So they have to give the okay to say appoint persons before it goes to our PSC. And our PSC is the body responsible for appointing public officers.
Now, the mediation step that you've described, which seems to have some quality issues around it if the Labour minister is involved, because clearly he's a political animal. But what happens if that doesn't work? Is there a step after that? Because again, I don't know that you can mediate on breaching the law.
Then we have arbitration. And if we have arbitration, it means that it becomes more or less a kind of legal matter, because then the arbitrator would just make the decision. Yes. Right? We would not have a say in what happens. So we do not really want it to meet arbitration, but we would have to actually agree on who the arbitrators are, because we would have to have one person, the government would have its person, and then they would have a chair of the arbitration panel, the arbitration committee.
And that is final. That's in your procedure. That's the final decision.
When the arbitrator makes the decision, we don't have to accept it if we don't agree with it. We could say, no, we're not accepting it and go to court. But within our court system, it is such a long, drawn-out process. The court case never calls. We have been in court now since 2018 for our pension, and we have only had 3 hearings. The last hearing we had was early this year in January. And when we went to that session, we were called very early in the morning, the same day, and told that we are to report to court. When we went into court, we sat in court because it's online. We sat in court from about 9 o'clock until 12 o'clock, only to be told that the judge has decided to give you a new date, and he has not determined that date as yet. So they would call us back, or they would write to our lawyers and tell our lawyer when that date would be. So that is how difficult, frustrating it is for us. Let me describe what actually happened during that time. The union was going to be calling a serious strike action. And we had the support of our membership at that time. Our members were really on board. The public was on board with us. And the Saturday, government opened the court on the Saturday to file an injunction against our union, to say to us that your workers are workers who are
essential
workers, and therefore they cannot take strike action. They cannot engage in any action. You represent essential workers, and we don't have all our members are not essential workers. We represent the healthcare system, which is a large portion of essential workers, and those are the main essential workers that we have, right? So whether or not these persons were going to be involved in the strike action had nothing to do with the fact that the other members were going to be involved who were not essential workers, considered essential workers. So government uses all forms of strategies to try to oppress and to try to prevent workers from standing up for their rights. And
Okay.
when they use some of these strategies, workers become intimidated, workers become afraid, and you sometimes lose the type of support that you had with the workers because they tend to draw back. Because government could do this now. Government, look at government file an injunction against you. We were able to get over that hurdle of the injunction because we had a great lawyer. We had a great team of lawyers working with us who worked with us diligently Sunday all up to Monday morning. And we went, and that made the government of Grenada actually call off the injunction to prevent us. And they call it off simply to tell us we would call off the injunction if you call off your strike. And we went back to the table and sit with them. We went back to the table and sit with them because we made compromises. And this was the compromise that we had made with the government of Grenada. That while we know we have pension in our constitution, it is our constitutional right. And I don't even think the unions had the right to actually negotiate pension because it was a constitutional right. The unions took the initiative hoping that we could get something for our members, and we negotiated the pension, whereby we said to government, we would take 70% of our pension, right? And you would give us a top up. You would just give us a top up to make it the 70%. So whatever percentage we were going to get from the national insurance scheme, we would just take a little bit from it and top it up. If we're getting 55% from the national insurance scheme, we would take 15% from you. But what we would like to have is the gratuity, which was 25%. Government decided, no, I cannot accept that. And they decided to give us 2% pension. 2%. And the workers said this was unacceptable. We would not accept this. After we had signed an agreement with them, they stated the agreement did not state the percentage of pension. And that is the error we made as a trade union movement. We did not ensure that we state clearly in that agreement that the pension that we spoke about, the gratuity that we spoke about, was 25%. We just had on the table pension and gratuity, recognizing that gratuity is always 25%. We
Okay,
thought
well,
it was understood, that it was implied, but therein it was not implied. For them, they said no, many of them are on contract. We have a larger number of contract workers than established workers. So the balance has changed. And
okay.
this is one of the reasons it is, we say union busting. Government really wants to have no union within the public service.